Hi everyone, my name is Loredana DeMarco. Today I will be presenting my story map titled Moose Habitat Suitability Analysis in Greenville, Maine. So the purpose of this project was to use Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, to identify areas within Greenville that may provide suitable habitat for the eastern moose. Rather than confirming where moose are actually currently located, this project examines environmental conditions that may support moose habitat. The analysis focuses primarily on access to water, distance from public roads, and forest cover. Okay, so habitat suitability analyses are used to determine whether an area contains the environmental conditions necessary to support a particular species. These analyses combine geographic information with environmental variables such as land cover, water availability, and human infrastructure. These results can help scientists, conservation organizations, and wildlife managers, as well as community planners, identify areas that may require protection or additional research. For this project, I selected Greenville, Maine as my study area. Greenville is located in the Piscataway Country in north central Maine, along the southern shore of Moosehead Lake. The area contains extensive forests, wetlands, rivers, streams, lakes, and ponds. It also has a relatively small human population and large areas of undeveloped land. These characteristics make Greenville an appropriate location for studying moose habitat. Forested areas can provide food, shelter, and cover for moose. Lakes, streams, and wetlands, as well as other water features, can provide access to water and aquatic vegetation. However, roads and development can fragment habitat, increase noise and human activity, and create a greater risk of wildlife vehicle collisions. The goal of my project was to examine how these natural features and human infrastructure interact across the Greenville landscape. Okay, so study area. The Greenville study area covers approximately 44 square miles. I created a polygon boundary representing the municipal limits of Greenville using the Maine town boundary dataset. This boundary was used to clip the other datasets so that my analysis focused only on features located within the town. Greenville was selected because it contains all of the primary features needed for the analysis, including forested land cover, public roads, and a large number of hydrographic features. The variety of forests, lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands provide an opportunity to examine the relationship between natural habitat and human transportation networks. Okay, so data. So my analysis used three primary data sets: land cover, roads, and hydro hydrography. The land cover data came from the National Land Cover Database, or the NLCD. This dataset classifies the landscape into categories such as deciduous forest, evergreen forest, mixed forest, developed land, wetlands, and open water. The land cover raster has a spatial resolution of 30 meters. This means that each raster cell represents an area measuring 30 meters by 30 meters on the ground. The road dataset came from the Maine Department of Transportation. It includes highways, local roads, and other public transportation routes throughout the state. The hydrography dataset came from the Maine Office of GIS. It contains mapped water features such as lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. These datasets were selected because they represent three important components of the simplified habitat model: vegetation, water availability, and human disturbance. Okay, so methods. So the first step in the analysis was to project the Greenville boundary public roads and hydrography data in the NAD 83 UTM Zone 19 North coordinate system. Using the same projected coordinate system was important because the project required accurate distance measurements. Next, I clipped the road and hydrography layers to the Greenville municipal boundary. This removed features outside of the study area. I then created a dissolved 250-meter buffer around the water features. This buffer represented locations that were close enough to lakes, ponds, rivers, or streams to meet the project's water proximity requirement. After that, I dissolved 500-meter buffer around the public roads. The road buffer represented areas that may experience greater disturbance from traffic, noise, unusual activity, and wildlife vehicle interactions. I then used the difference tool to remove all areas located within 500 meters of public road from the 250-meter water buffer. The polygons that remained met both preliminary requirements. They were located within 250 meters of mapped water feature and more than 500 meters from a public road. These remaining polygons were saved as a preliminary suitable habitat. The planned final step was to include the land cover data by retaining only areas classified as deciduous forest, evergreen forest, or mixed forest. Those raster cells would be converted into polygons and intersected with the preliminary habitat layer. However, the forest cover requirement had not yet been incorporated into the draft model. Because of this, the map results should be interpreted as a preliminary rather than a final habitat suitability. Okay, so now we have results. So the analysis identified several separate patches of potential eastern moose habitat within Greenville. The largest candidate areas were located near lakes, streams, ponds, and freshwater features that were farther away from the primary road network. The suitability areas did not form one large continuous zone. Instead, they appeared as fragmented patches distributed around water features. This fragmented pattern reflects the locations of Greenville's water systems and transportation infrastructure. The road distance requirement had a particularly strong influence on the results. Many areas initially met the requirement of being 250 meters of water. However, portions of those areas were removed because they were located 500 meters of public road. As a result, the amount of land classified as preliminary suitable habitat was reduced, and the remaining areas became more fragmented. The shape of suitable areas was also strongly influenced by the hydrography data. Many of the polygons followed the narrow and branching pattern of streams, lake shorelines, and ponds. Okay. So the results demonstrate how different habitat criteria can affect the final suitability map. The road buffer was intended to represent possible disturbance from roads, including traffic, noise, human access, and vehicle collision risk. However, one limitation is that the model treated all public roads equally. A major highway may create more disturbance than a lightly traveled local road, but both road types receive the same 500-meter buffer. This simplified the effect of roads and did not account for the differences in traffic volume or road size. The water proximity requirement also simplified habitat conditions. All mapped water features were treated as having the same habitat value. The model did not distinguish between large lakes, small ponds, wetlands, permanent rivers, or seasonal streams. These different types of water reservoirs may not provide the same resources or habitat quality for moose. Another important limitation is that forest cover was not yet incorporated into the preliminary results. Some of the currently mapped areas may include developed land, open water, wetlands, or non-forested land cover types. After forest cover is added, some of those areas may no longer be classified as suitable. The source data also have limitations. The land cover raster may generalize complex vegetation into broad categories, meaning the small habitat features can be missed. The hydrography data may not contain every seasonal or intermittent stream, and the road data may not include all private or logging roads. The dataset were also produced in different years, which may create inconsistencies between the conditions represented by each layer. Because of these limitations, The results should be viewed as the initial screening tool rather than the final determination of habitat quality. Okay, so future improvements. With additional time and data, the model could be improved in several ways. Roads could be classified according to traffic volume or road type. Larger roads could receive wider disturbance buffers, while smaller roads could receive more narrower buffers. The analysis could also include additional environmental variables such as wetlands, forest age, recent timber harvests, elevation, slope cover, and documented moose sightings. A weighted suitability model could be created so that each variable receives a different level of importance instead of classifying locations as simply suitable or unsuitable. Wildlife survey data, GPS collar locations, or recorded moose observations could also be used to compare the predicted habitat with the actual moose activity. This could help determine how accurately the model represents habitat within Greenville. Okay. So, in conclusion, the project used GIS to examine potential eastern moose habitat in Greenville, Maine. The analysis identified land located within 250 meters of mapped water features and removed areas located within 500 meters of public roads. The remaining areas form separate habitat patches near lakes, streams, ponds, and other water features farther from the road network. The road distance requirement had a strong effect on the results because it removed large portions of otherwise suitable near water habitat and increased fragmentation. The findings are preliminary because the forest cover requirement had not yet been added to the model. Although this analysis does not confirm that moose are present in the mapped locations, it demonstrates how GIS can combine environmental data to support conservation planning and land management discussions. The result could help identify possible location for future field surveys, examine habitat fragmentation, or explore new roads and development could affect potential habitat. Overall, the map should be viewed as a starting point for further research rather than a final assessment of moose habitat quality. Here are the references. Thank you for listening to my presentation.